All right, welcome ladies and gentlemen to week number 34, Open Q&A. My name is Brian McLogan and I am here to answer your questions, but also I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of heads up on some things you should expect this upcoming school year. So I just went back into the classroom last week. We invited some students in for classes on Thursday and Friday. And I just wanted to kind of, let you guys know a little bit how that went about, how our kind of district is handling going back to school in these kind of challenging times, and then also some things for you guys to expect. If you are maybe already in the classroom, or if you're doing distance learning, or maybe your school or university has not started yet, I do have some things that I want to share with you that I think are going to be very important and also just helpful for you to kind of know how what to expect kind of moving forward. And then I'll get into your questions. I think I have 8 questions coming through. I finally decided just to start copy and pasting. There was some problems that I was just not able to get to. I do apologize, guys. I'm now back in school mode. And what being back in school mode means is now I'm just like very, very busy. So I was only able to kind of like look through these questions as fast as possible. So if there's anything where I needed to like think through the problem or just like kind of internalize it a little bit, I just had to skip it. So I kept quite a bit of them, just so I might be able to, hopefully next week, maybe I'll have a little bit more time and I can just look at them and see if it's something I could add. So I do apologize for that. And again, guys, as always, if you do have questions, inside my description is the link to Discord. You guys can also go ahead and submit some questions on Discord as well as help some people out. But I see you, Sharmila, XP, Woody, Jack, Super, Pick Plays, XP, Dorkund, thank you so much. I do have a little bit of statistics videos, but nothing that's like very great. Like I only have statistics from when I taught Algebra 2. So it's like very basic and very like minimum of them. And Addie, great to see you as always. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in tonight. I am looking forward to a great stream. Until your first year is home or suck. I'm attending high school this year. First year, high school will suck. Yeah, it's going to be definitely kind of different. And that's kind of like, let's kind of talk about the things you should expect. So at least in our school, we are doing a hybrid learning where half of the school is showing up and then the other school is doing distance learning. And, when you are in school, everybody's wearing masks. The desks are as socially distanced as we can possibly have them, but they're definitely in rows. And then, we have desk dividers as well. So we have like little plastic desk dividers and stuff like that. And it's kind of depressing. It really is. I was excited to get back into the classroom. And then once they kind of put up those desk dividers, you just like, you lost all of that interaction of what made sense to being back in the classroom. And I totally get it, why why those are implemented. But, just being a teacher and wanting that interaction of teaching with students, it was kind of tough to know how to do that. So, this is something that we're going to be implementing. And really my first thing I really wanted you to understand is things are going to change. This is no matter how like week 1 goes, day 1 goes, just know that as more information comes out, as we are going through things are going to change. Whatever it is right now is not going to be what it's going to be like in a couple of weeks or a couple months or even a year. So just make sure you're being very flexible and understanding, which kind of brings me up to my next point, which is absolutely nobody knows what they are doing or what is going on because nobody has gone through any situation like this, and that's perfectly okay. And hopefully you have some good leaders at our school. We have some great, outstanding leaders that are making some decisions and they are giving us confidence. And, also as me as a teacher, like as a leader of the classroom, you have to expel that confidence as well to the students because it's, we still have a job to get done. And that job is still, we want to make sure that we are delivering instructions, motivating, encouraging students, and providing them a safe, environment to be curious and to grow as a human. And, I think one of these things is when you're charging into that unknown, you just got to go with what your gut and, what you do know. and just keep on moving forward. So, it's very easy to always second guess people after something has happened or after we know more information. But, I think with the best thing is that flexibility of, yes, things are going to change. But then I also know, like, just know when people are making decisions, they're making the best decisions, or typically they're making the best decisions based on their knowledge that they currently have. But in reality, nobody knows the perfect answer, and there is no perfect answer, at any situation. So it is kind of one of those unknowns. And I know we all want everything to be perfect and exactly we want things the way that, they're supposed to be and how we want them. But, in reality, that's just not the way things are. And the last thing I just want to let you know is if you like online learning or you hate online learning, unfortunately, I am pretty confident that online learning is here to stay. I do not see any way where we are going to go back. Is my face still froze? I just saw that. I think your face froze. I see my face is froze on the thing, but it seems my connection, though, is, let me check it seems I have a fine connection. Does anybody else let me know if there's any other issue with that? Just let me know if you guys will go ahead and add in the chat if you guys see anything from there. I'm not sure. It freezes it on my side, but I'm not seeing anything else with this. I don't like art class. Okay, well, I guess that answers my question. So anyways, if you guys just let me know if as long as everything streams going fine. It freezes on my end, but it does that every live stream. So I just want to make sure that I am streaming fine for you guys. It's fine. All right. I'm not sure. It might just be an internet connection. I'm sorry about that, Pick Blaze. So anyways, the online learning, guys, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And actually, it makes me more scared than anything else because, I'm looking on like even my Facebook feed and you're just seeing like all these ads for like learning online, tutoring, and like all this stuff. And I'm like, oh man, it's like the Wild West now. Everybody is getting into this online learning thing. And it's going to be a wild ride, I think, for the next couple of years where everybody is going to be entering and pushing into this online learning and, doing something that I've been doing online learning, or at least recording myself since 2010. And, and especially even my experience from last year, this online learning is not the silver bullet. There's a lot of advantages to online learning. And a lot of those advantages are why you guys have joined up to my channel, as well. Like I have made videos in the past that have served you, that have helped you, learn. You guys can watch them on your own time. You can download them if you don't have internet connection. You can watch them. Like if you don't have access to a teacher or whatever else, like those are amazing qualities of online education. I'm not sure qualities is the best thing, but those are amazing benefits of the online learning space. But I think one of the problems is everybody going to be pushing this online learning because one, at least at this point, this is kind of where we are at. It makes a little bit more sense to do the online learning than in person, just from like a safety kind of perspective, I would say. But my issue is, like learning online. I know from my personal experience, I do not learn very well online. I need that individual and relationship kind of, to be with the teacher, be inside the classroom, to ask the questions and to get that kind of setup. And I know many students are exact same with me, especially with mathematics. So, that's kind of my concern. And especially when, one thing that I have a trouble with, even as a teacher is wanting to overteach or over explain things. And yeah, a lot of teachers that don't have that experience, that's what they're going to do, and we're expecting a lot of students, especially now to be, sitting in front of a computer and to be learning all this math. It's not like you're inside of a classroom where you get that interaction and you're, lively, you're moving around. No, you're sitting in a chair, staring at a computer screen, trying to, understand these concepts that sometimes can be pretty confusing, right? I mean, math or, whatever the topic may be. And those are definitely going to be some complications that are going to arise from this. And I think it's just very important that we, know about them. Oh, Thomas, why would you want to do? Oh, McLeod. I think we're just, making sure that we are aware of those and, are not relying too much on online education. It has some amazing characteristics, guys. Or why do I keep on saying characteristics? It has some amazing benefits, but I think that the power of being of that teacher and or mentor, master, whatever you want to call it, kind of relationship with that student is going to be the most important. And I think that interaction with them and that relationship is something that we need to make sure that we prioritize and not just all jump into the efficiency of online learning, which is great, but it doesn't solve everything. Yeah, I agree. And when I'm going to do online learning, I mean, I got to keep things really quick, because like I can't expect my students to be staring at a screen for 46 minutes, expecting them to be engaged and learning everything we're doing. So, those are some things that I'm going to be working with as well, as we get through this. So, all right, guys. Good job. Yeah, Thomas, potato. See, man, yeah, I get it. Do you do private tutoring? I do not, Royal, do any private tutoring. This is as private tutoring as I get. However, I do offer additional live stream open Q&A for my YouTube members. I do that on the first Saturday of every month. So if you're interested in that, there's not as many students that join those live streams because it's obviously private. So if you are looking for definitely getting some more questions answered, then you can join as a YouTube member and get into that. And I also just kind of give, I also do a little bit of a vlog on my YouTube membership for you guys, just to kind of let you guys know a little bit behind my scenes. So I always, forget to mention, but that's always something if you guys are interested in supporting my channel, which I have some more videos I got to make, but which I'm looking forward to doing because from your guys' support on my channel membership really has allowed me guys to build out my studio and also to create some more videos. So I do greatly appreciate all of you supporters out there. And yeah, if you're interested in looking into some more tutoring opportunities, well, thank you, Dor Kuhn. Thank you so much for the super chat. I greatly appreciate it. That is one way that you can get some extra tutoring from me. I at least just do it every once a month, and then I do have some other perks on there as well, which I'm actually looking into changing the YouTube membership once again for you, just because I got to simplify it with school starting. I wanted to do a lot of things over the summer, which I was doing, but then now with school, I just don't have time to do everything that I want to do. So I'm going to simplify it again, just to make things kind of a little more streamlined. And then, so we'll have some other things coming up the pipeline for you guys, which I will definitely be talking about more often. When should I expect in pre-calc? Okay. So I'll go ahead and get to the rest of your guys' questions. I do have, I think, 8 math questions I need to get to that I wanted to cover. So I'll go and cover to those. And then if there's any other questions that you guys have that you would like me to address by the end of this stream, then feel free just to add them into the chat after that. But to make sure the stream doesn't last too long, I am going to get started in these questions. And again, guys, to submit a question to me, obviously you can always put them in the chat, but as you can see, sometimes when there are enough people in the chat and they're chatting away, I'm not going to get time to see your question. And so the best thing to do is to go to, in the description, is go to the Google form, and you can post your question inside of there. And make sure that you are very detailed with your question, so therefore I can address it, because I cannot respond to you from that question. Once you input your question, I don't have any response from there. So make sure you guys get everything inputted in there correctly. If you are looking for something a little bit more for a quicker response, because I only answer those questions on my live streams. So if you're looking for something a little bit quicker, I also have a link to my Discord where you can go and join that server and post questions as well as help other people out. And Bogus Gaming, thank you so much for another super chat. That's 2 super chats this time. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Really help me out as far as I enjoy these streams. I've been doing them for longer than 33 weeks, but I haven't been doing them for 33 weeks consecutively. So that was kind of my goal. I was like, all right, if I'm going to be labeling these, then I'm going to do them consecutively. But I've also been doing them for over a year now. So actually, I have been doing them for over a year. From on there. And Christopher, thank you so much. Teach your family, teach the whole class, everyone at A. I'm so sorry about that, but I'm very happy to help you out. Who could do it? All right. And hi, Liberated Treats. Thank you so much, guys. We get in there. All right, so I'm going to get into this good old math, and then I'll come back to your guys' questions, and we'll see how much time we have at the end. So The first one comes from Adeline, which is asking me, I believe, to simplify. She didn't state, she just gave me a question. And so I'm just going to go ahead and simplify this, and we'll kind of go from there. So the first thing we want to do is just always kind of factor. And because to simplify, basically we're trying to divide out terms in the numerator and the denominator. So what we want to do is rewrite this as multiplication. And so in this case, I'm going to factor out what they have in common in the numerator is x cubed. So I can factor that out, basically meaning I can divide that out, and that's going to give me a 4x minus 1. And then in the denominator, I can factor out a 2, and that's going to leave me with a 4x minus 1. So there's a couple important things. The first thing is by factoring out or dividing out that term, we rewrote this expression as multiplication, right? That's the idea of factoring, is to rewrite the expression as multiplication, which is another video that I have coming up. The next thing is now we have an expression that's exactly the same in the numerator and the denominator. So it doesn't matter if it's like 2 over 2, that's equal to 1, or if it's x plus 2 over x plus 2, that's equal to 1 as well. So whenever we have the same expression in the numerator and the denominator, and we have anything else separated by multiplication, then we can just go ahead and divide that out to equal 1, which we call the division property. And therefore, we're left with x cubed over 2, or 1/2 x cubed. A couple of different ways to write that. All right, bye-bye, Thomas. Pritam asked me a better at math. He also gave me another question, but I just didn't have time to kind of look at that. But looking at his question that he got, which looks kind of like pretty advanced, he was asking like, how can I get better at maths? And the one way I looked at like approaching, his question is, what I think is difficult with the online learning is, one, you got to be curious. That's one thing that I'm very, very passionate about in learning math is like being curious, like why does this work? Where does this come from? Like asking those questions. And I think the other part is, practicing so that you get that repetition and getting used to understanding, because by going through multiple problems, you start to make those connections. Your brain starts to get used to understanding what it's doing and why things are happening. And then the other thing is to challenge yourself, because you're just like anything else. If you're just doing, working out with the same weights, you're not going to be building up that strength. It takes changing things, changing the types of problems that you're working on, improving that complexity. And that's how you're going to get better. So I would say really, 3 things. And I'm just coming off the top of my head. And actually, that's maybe another good video. Let's maybe add that in there. So let's talk about the 3 things. So thank you very much for the 99-cent super chat. I do greatly appreciate it. Darkun, thank you so much. So let's go and write this down. I want you to be curious. I need you to practice. And the other thing is I want you to challenge yourself. Okay? So I think if you just focus on those 3 things, obviously there's probably a lot of other better things, but coming off just the top of my head, I would say those are some 3 things that you can definitely work on and focus on to get better at math. All right, the next one is actually a word problem, which I swear I never like to do, but this one I was able to read really quickly, and I believe I had an idea exactly what I wanted to do in there, so I will go ahead, and I don't think actually I had to solve anything. That's why I was like, okay, yeah, great. So I'll do this word problem. So a lighthouse is 2 kilometers south of a port. So let's just call it point, and let's call it point P. And then let's call this the lighthouse. And let's use L for lighthouse. Okay. And then we'll go the distance from here to here. And we're just going to use 2. Okay. I'm not going to use kilometers. I'm just going to put 2, and we'll put the distance later. The ship leaves port and sails east at a rate of 7 kilometers per hour. So we're going east now. So again, if you're going to have it's important that whenever you're drawing with these cardinal directions that you just kind of write in where is due north, due east, due south, and west. Obviously, so we have the bearings and we know where we're going. So you're going that rate, but now you're going at a rate. So remember, distance equals rate times time. So you're going at 7 kilometers per hour, though. All right. So again, remember that's your rate. So this is very important because to find the distance, we need to do the rate times the time. So it's saying express the distance between the ship and the lighthouse as a function of time, given that the ship has been sailing for hours. So it doesn't say how many hours. So I'm assuming we're just going to say this distance then is going to be 7 hours, right? If he traveled for 1 hour, he traveled 7 kilometers. If he goes for 2 hours, he travels 14 kilometers. So whatever that distance is, based on whatever the hours is, we're looking for D, which is going to be the distance here. All right. And now hopefully you can see that since we're doing due south and due east, we just have the Pythagorean theorem. So we have D squared, which we're trying to solve for, is equal to 2 squared plus 7h quantity squared. And they said express D. Yep, so that's going to be the square root of 4 plus, let's just say, 49h squared. There you go. And then if I just wanted to find the hours for 20, all I do is I would place 20 kilometers in for D. And then you would just square both sides and then go ahead and solve from there. So hopefully that makes a little sense and helps you out from there. All right, the next one is to combine some surds or some radical expressions. So the main thing is when we are simplifying our radical expressions, they have to have the same index, meaning they both have to be the square roots or cube root or fourth root, and they both have the same the radicand. So whatever's under the radical has to be exactly the same. And as long as that's the same, then they're what we're called like terms, and we can just combine the coefficients. So it's really no difference than like this, 40 plus 20x plus 20x, right? We know that when we have x, when we have the same base and power, right, which we could relate here with the square roots, then all you're going to do is just add the 20 plus the 20, which gives you 40x, right? We don't do it. It's not like x squared or 2x. That's just your common term. So in this case, I can just add the 20 plus the 20, which is going to be 40. So I have 40 plus 40 square root of 2. Now in this case, we could simplify it a little bit further. Since they have a 40 in common out of both of those expressions, I could factor it. I could write it as a factored expression of 40 times 1 plus square root of 2. So this is another way that you just might see it. It's just rewriting in what we call an equivalent expression. But you know, it not typically necessary from there. All right, so this one's from Anna. I think it was Anna Mullis. Sorry, I mispronounced all my students' names last week. It was horrible, but actually, I was actually proud of myself. I got one right, and she said, "Oh my God, nobody got it right yet today." And I was like, "Hey, there you go." I badger everybody's names, but I, made a lucky guess and went from there. So Anna did not tell me which problem she wanted me to do. She just gave me a whole bunch of them, Anna, but that's okay. These are rather simple. I'm assuming I'm just going to do these top two because this one is easy to do. But the main important thing here for this problem is remember when you're subtracting a negative, guys, that's just going to be p plus 5 is equal to 8, right? So subtracting a negative is just going to turn to a positive. And now to use the inverse operations to isolate the p, I'm going to subtract a 5 on both sides. So p is equal to 3. Over here, typically when we're solving one-step, two-step equations, we like to solve for the variable on the left-hand side, and we want to make it negative. Now in this case, there's a couple different ways we could do that. I think when I'm solving like equations, one-step or two-step equations, I just like to keep the variable where it's at and then just use inverse operations. So I noticed there's a couple things that's happening to this variable, and sometimes it helps just to rearrange it. Okay, so if you recognize this, you really see that my q is being multiplied by -1 and being added to a 2. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes students don't see the adding by 2 when it's just written like this. So that's why it's helpful to rearrange it. So just using my inverse operations, I will subtract a 2 on both sides, and then do undo multiplying by -1. I will divide by -1. So therefore, it's going to be 3 equals a q. All right. Hopefully that helps. And then this one's from Melissa Rodriguez 7. She just gave me an equation. She didn't tell me what to do. So I'm assuming it was graphing. So guys, just make sure you let me know what you want me to do. So let's go ahead and graph this. And remember guys, all linear equations can be written in the form y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope. Now, a lot of times students have difficulty when it's just a negative x. So remember, like, let's do this. So a couple things. This is my favorite thing. This has nothing to do with this problem. But remember, 4 over negative 2 is equal to negative 4 over 2, which is equal to a negative 4 over 2, which is not equal to a negative 4 over negative 2. Okay, so what I'm trying to state here is when you have a negative fraction, that negative symbol can go in the numerator or in the denominator or out in front, but you cannot put it in the numerator and the denominator. Why am I bringing this up? Well, because in this case, you could write this as negative 1x plus 7, right? But that's not really helpful. So remember, for slope, we want to have a rise and a run. So I can write this as a negative 1 over 1x plus 7, right? Or 1 over negative 1. It doesn't really matter where that negative is. Just don't put it in the numerator and the denominator. So now that I have my slope written as a fraction, I will go ahead and find the y-intercept, which is at 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the way that I wrote this, I put the negative 1. So I go down 1 and then to the right 1. And then all you need is 2 points, guys, to graph a line. And again, if you went the other way, if you put this as a 1 over negative 1, then you go up and to the left and get another point right there as well. All right, the next one is Azela. I believe it was asking like how to distribute, and I looked at her work. It looks like everything that she did was good. I kind of like posting somebody's like work when they show it, so it's pretty cool. So everything's good. I think she kind of had trouble like what to do now. Would you just divide by 5, which is fine. Maybe she got a little freaked out, like, hey, my answer is not pretty, you know. But let's go and look at this as an alternative solution, because she did ask like, how do I distribute that? So let's maybe work it out that way and make sure that we get the same answer, because we should. Okay, so let's distribute. So 5/2 times x is going to be a 5/2 x. 5/2 times negative 2 is going to be, negative 2 times 5/2 equals negative 12. Now here, this is really a 2 over 1, right? Anytime you have a integer times a fraction, just change your integer, or anytime you're doing operations with an integer and a fraction, just change your integer to a fraction by putting it over 1. Well, now you can see that since these are separated by multiplication, we can apply our division property. So I have 5/2 x minus 5 equals negative 12. Now I can just use my inverse operations to solve for x. So I'll add a 5 on both sides. So you have 5/2 x equals, let's see, what's that, negative 7. And now my x is being multiplied by 5/2. So I could divide by 5/2, which is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. And therefore, x equals a negative 14 over 5. And there you go. All right, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Students didn't tell me what they were doing, but it looks like, mostly some Algebra 1 kind of stuff material. All right, the last question is going into cosine inverse. So now we'll get into a little bit of trig. So definitely all over the place here, and that's definitely cool. So the important thing is remember what the cosine graph looks like, okay? So that's what the cosine graph looks like. It continues on and on. Now, the important thing about this is this cosine graph is not one-to-one, right? It fails what we call the horizontal line test. And if a function is not one-to-one, then it is non-invertible, meaning its inverse is not going to be a function. And remember, to find the inverse of a function, you can just reflect it about the y equals x line. And obviously, if we were to do that, what would happen here is we would get a graph that looks like this. No, let me do it. Let's do this again. Right, so this is y equals cosine of x, and let's call this y equals cosine inverse of x. So obviously you can see in this graph that passes the horizontal, that doesn't pass the horizontal line test or the vertical line test, right? So what we have to do is we have to restrict the graph. No, not that one. Oh, did I not? Oh, I kind of stopped it. Oops. Okay. So the way that we're going to restrict the graph, which is kind of gets a little confusing for students why we get to this point, but we're going to restrict the graph between these two values. And if you look at these two values on the, if you look at these two values between the graph for cosine, let me just get rid of this. I don't need that. That just kind of gets confusing. We are going to be restricting it between negative, no, not from there, between 0 and pi. 0 to pi halves. There we go. Yeah. There you go. So we're going to restrict it between, we're going to restrict this cosine from 0 to pi, or to pi, sorry, from 0 to pi. And there you go. Because you can see the restriction from 0 to pi, that passes, that's 1 to 1, right? And so when you reflect that, you can see that you now get a function that passes the vertical line test. So that is why that we have, when we're doing cosine inverse, we're only going to restrict it from 0 to pi. So we're only going to include values from 0 to pi. And actually, no, those are both included. It's been a while. Okay, so that's why we have that restriction of the input is going to be between 0 and pi of cosine of x to go ahead and find that from there. So that's why we have that restriction. Obviously, there is restrictions on sine and tangent, which is from negative pi halves to pi halves. I kind of mentioned this is something I spent like a whole class period kind of going over. And so, but hopefully at least that will kind of give you an idea. There's a couple different problems we can go from there, but I think if you understand at least restrictions, then that's going to help you out as well. All right, that is kind of it, unless you guys have any other maybe minor questions. I don't really want to do a full math problem. I still got some classwork I still got to do to prep for tomorrow. But thank you so much, guys, for staying on. UK teachers are so bad. Sorry to hear about that. Well, hey, nature is awesome. Good to see you on. You are, well, thank you, Marivi. That's not very nice. Curtis, good to see you. The dude with Mr. Icon asking for someone for weird. Who's Mr. Oh, the Mr. Yeah. That's not very nice. All right. Man, that's the time of year. Not understand anything. You have to explain everything last second. Yeah, I guess that maybe that's part of my recommendation is once you start struggling a little bit in some math, my YouTube channel start popping up. I apologize for that, guys. It is that time of the year, but it's I'm here with you. I mean, I'm doing the same thing with you guys. It's going to be an interesting year and not something that I'm looking forward to. I much rather wish we were snap my fingers and I was back in the classroom teaching exactly what I know, but I also know that, this is how change happens and we can't control, what things are going to be covering and we just got to go through and make the best of it. So, do you do the live stream for the pre-cut class? I'm not sure yes, I mean, as far as in my online pre-cut class, I'm doing live streams for that. Inside my classroom, we split it up, but the online course that I have is I do live streams, not inside my classroom, but I'm just doing live streams kind of like this every week to help students with their pre-calculus class. So that was something I was thinking about maybe opening back up or having a portion of the course still available for some students. So I just haven't decided what I want to do. But I know some students have been asking me about opportunities because they didn't start school yet or, were thinking or needing help in pre-calculus. So I want to kind of see what I can do to help them out. Ice, do you think this year is going to be easier? Yes, I do. Yes. Yes and no. I think in my opinion, I am not giving as many tests and as difficult to be from that regard. The I would say no, because, unlike last year where a lot of like tests and everything was like forgiven, they have a lot more time. We have a lot more time now to, prepare for everything. And so I would definitely expect there to be more tests, that you need to take. And so that could be more difficult, for you, the prep as well as taking, the prep and taking the course, or the prep and taking the test online. But, I think overall, one thing that this, kind of pandemic has taught us is, we don't need to test students as much. And really, we're not learning it. That's not really great educational practice. It's very good to like compare and organize children by giving them a lot of tests. But like we survived. We didn't test, kids. Like we don't need to, I think, go down that route as much. Rebecca says, I'm starting pre-calculus, pre-calc BC as a freshman tomorrow, and I have a quiz on all of Algebra 2 the first day of school, and I forgot everything. Well, that's a lot, Rebecca. Yeah, I can only imagine everything that you are going through, because that is all of Algebra 2. That is a lot, especially when you go back through. But yeah, there's a lot in Algebra 2, Rebecca. I would definitely recommend that you go back, if you need some help, go back through I gave a pre-calculus live streams, as far as preparing for pre-calculus. I did like 4 live streams in July. And with those live streams, I have a workbook that you can go and practice that kind of goes through some of the fundamental skills to be successful in pre-calculus. So I would definitely go through that. It's kind of a lot, especially if you're starting school. So it might be too much now, but I'd still maybe go and take a look at it. Maybe you can like look at my answers and, kind of gain some benefit there. And then, if there's obviously, if I open up the portion of my course, that might be something you might be interested in. So I would just, stay tuned to the channel. And if that's something I decide to do. Mari's saying, do you think a year will be easier? So then we use log base 10. When we use in base E. Usually, it doesn't really matter what the base. You'll just use it for different applications. A lot of times the base E, I like to use the base E, especially for financial applications. And actually, use a lot of times when I'm just doing math, I'll use base E from there. 20 days, and I'm taking algebra and geometry this year. Whew. Good for you, Zivo. You got this. Yes, quadratic equations. Maybe I don't. So I have a quiz tomorrow or functions, and I'd be struggling. I definitely get it, Sam. It's a lot. That's why a lot of for you guys that are starting to struggle and trying to get through this, that's why I want to kind of open up my course possibly again. So therefore, if you guys are looking into some resources like my lectures that I'm giving my students, my homework, my tests and quizzes, I know some of you might benefit and really would like that. So I'm looking into seeing what I want to do. Obviously, it's a lot that I'm currently doing already with students that are inside my online course, but I might be able to open up some different portions of it. More than the teachers will feel bad for students. I'm not really sure like feeling bad for them, but like for instance in math, I would always give like I'd do quizzes and tests. So I always gave, for every chapter, I gave 2 quizzes and a test, and part of them were free response, part of them were multiple choice. Well, there's just so much prep now for me getting into this online learning. I just don't have time to be, grading as much free response as I typically would inside the classroom. So I'm just reducing the number of assessments students take. They're still going to take a test, and that test is going to be free response and multiple choice. But for the quizzes, I just don't have time to grade their free response portions. And I don't give them enough multiple choice to like really warrant like a decent grade. So I'm just making the quizzes like a kind of like a group assignment, and we're just going to pretend it's like a quiz, and it'll be a little bit more work, but I'm just not going to do a quiz. It's just, I could, and I know there's other teachers that are going to, not making really any changes that way. It's just for me, I just have so much work I have to do. I don't think that is really going to make that much of an impact on the students, plus or minus. And I'm assuming some other teachers are in the same way, especially with math, when we have to do a lot of grading on, for students' work. it's difficult when you're in that online format. So yeah, that's where I would definitely say I kind of stand with that. What is the hardest branch of math? You guys are getting. I don't know. I'm not a math nerd. It's well, not so much a math nerd, but I mean, I've only scratched the surface as far as like mathematics. So there's way more that I don't know than I do know. So I'm not really sure. I can say the hardest part of calculus, or hardest part of calculus. I don't even have anything off the top of my head that, or even what I struggle with the most from there. Sorry, I don't really have a great answer for you. I have ACE classes and they're getting more lenient. Yeah, I mean, I'd expect so. I mean, I think you have to have at least some bit of like understanding, of like everything that's going on. Oh, Rebecca. Okay. So you're going back to Florida. Yeah. So right now we're hybrid. So we're like half in person, half in class. And then we're supposed to go back in person on the 14th. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. It's all virtual in Florida. Yeah, we're half and half. So it'll be things. Hola, Jordan. Muy bien. That's about as much Spanish as you're going to get out of me. Maybe a couple more here and there, but not too much. Mario said limits can get confusing. Yeah, limits, I mean, it's a lot with the limits is, making sure you understand the concept, and then it's just a lot of the algebra, that comes into as well. Find the domain. You're making me do a math problem. I'll just do one more problem. Just because you asked. Transformation of functions. Yes, but liberated, make sure you know that, because understanding transformations of functions is going to like save you so much time and frustration down the road. I swear. I used to like not emphasize as much transformation functions, but when you understand all of the transformations and how they're impacting those functions, it just helps you out immensely. So a couple things, if I wanted to find the domain here, a couple things that's going on, I would say, is that first of all, we recognize that we cannot divide by zero, and we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So typically, if we were finding the domain restrictions, I'd say I want all values that are going to be greater than or equal to zero. So I'd say x minus 1 has to be greater than or equal to zero, right? Because obviously I want all numbers that are going to be greater than zero, because x minus 1 has to be greater than zero, because if it's less than zero, I can't take the square root of it. The problem is this expression or quantity is in the denominator. And if it's in the denominator, we can't have it equal to zero. It just has to be greater than zero. So therefore, I'm going to write this as x minus 1 is greater than 0. Then I can add 1 to both sides. X has to be greater than 1. On a number line, I can write that as, here's 1, open circle from there. So the domain here is going to be, oops, not that. Ugh. So the domain here is going to be 1, comma, infinity. So there you go. All right, guys, that is all my math. I'm sorry if you guys are posting up math. No, you're not. All right, cool. Awesome. How do you study for calculus? Just the way you'd study for pre-calculus and all those other algebra 2 and everything else, guys. I would say you just gotta, even going back to my live stream, I'm not sure if you're up here, but I mean, it's the same thing. How do you start, practice? I think especially if you're taking calculus, it really comes down to that practice. Curious, why does certain things in calculus work? This is really cool in calculus, because you actually get to learn, I think this is really exciting stuff. This is the first time you're like, oh wow, I can actually see how math is connected, and math is applicable to real life situations. Why I had to learn all that boring stuff, and now things are starting to make sense. So if you're curious, especially in calculus, this stuff starts to look cool. Practice, there's once you start to get a calculus, the reason why students, some students struggle is because oh, I understand that. And then they'll only maybe do a couple problems, and then they'll realize they'll get to another problem that's a little not the way, doesn't look like the other problems. And then they get confused. So you can overcome that with practice. And the other thing I would say is just challenge yourself. If you really want to get, better at in calculus and understanding the concept and the material, you just got to keep on challenging yourself. And keep on challenging the types of questions and the math that you need to do for that. All right. Rolling back. Well, good luck, Ali, for that. Can you please explain the transitive property of inequality is? I have a test tomorrow. My teacher isn't replying. Well, it's transitive quality of inequality. I don't remember off the top of my head. My brain actually feels fried right now. I would have to be honest with you, go up and look at it. How many hours of studying do you recommend for grade 12S? I'm not familiar grade 12S, but what is your class highest, average, and lowest? I do not know that either. But I would definitely recommend, if anything, I don't have a time frame that I would say, but I would recommend doing math every day. So, if there's one day that you're doing a class, whatever your class assignment is, spend the next day just reviewing the material. But I think if you're doing something every single day, you are going to remember that. You're going to remember the content, and it is going to be fresh to you, and you're going to practice it. So I would just try to always be focusing on some content each and every day. I think that'd be the most important. Yes, thank you very much, Addie. You're always great for that. And all right, guys, I am the domain is what you solve to find the domain. Yes, if it's a rational function. Not always. Remember, there's two restrictions. There's many other restrictions, but two restrictions that we can focus on is you cannot divide by 0 and you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Okay, so for rational and radical functions, that is what you will focus on. And I did not know they offered trig or pre-calculus or what the difference is in the curriculum for those two. But all right. Fine, Kressler, you've been on this chat, so I'm going to answer one more question, but then I'm done, guys. I'm not doing any more math, so please don't put them in the chat, guys. But I'll do one more. But I mean, I don't know what the difference, trig and pre-calc. I mean, as far as my opinion, they're exactly the same course, roughly, maybe a little bit less from on there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess it really depends on what you're going to, if there is a difference. And you are very welcome, Sam. And to add into my chat, we a lot of times in functions, we just focus on the rational and the square root function. But obviously, once we get into other functions, like you're going to have restrictions on like natural logarithms. You'll have them on the trigonometric functions like tangent, cosecant, secant. Those also have restrictions as well. But typically when we're just looking in like a lot of these types of functions, just if you can remember the two rules, you can't divide by 0 and you can't take the square root of a negative number. That will help you identify the domains for those simple functions. There are non-imaginary solutions. Well, let's go and take a look at it. He said, can you please solve the equation? Discriminant and nature of roots. All right, so if I had an equation, x squared plus x plus 1 equals 0. If I wanted to find the discriminant, remember the discriminant is b squared minus 4 times a times c. And that's going to be what is under the square root in the quadratic formula, which if you remember, the quadratic formula here is going to be x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So that is the quadratic formula. So really I have 1 times x squared plus 1 times x plus 1. All right, so if I do my discriminant here, I'm going to have a 1 quantity squared minus 4 times 1 times 1. So that's a 1 minus 4, which is equal to negative 3. All right, so again, under the radical is going to be negative 3. Well, we already talked about that. You can't take the square root of negative 3, right? So that's for it's going to be a imaginary solutions. But again, we can still go ahead and determine our imaginary solutions using our quadratic formula. So x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root. We already figured out the discriminant, which is negative 3, all over 2 times 1. All right. And again, if we wanted to find the imaginary solutions, we could use the imaginary unit I. So x would equal negative 1 plus or minus I square root of 3 over 2. And you could distribute that x as well. So it'd be a negative 1/2 plus or minus. Let's see, how do we want to write this? Let's write this as 1/2 I square root of 3. So either notation, guys, would be perfectly fine. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you guys have a great start of your week in these next couple weeks as you guys are starting school. And I appreciate you guys staying on, answer your questions. Remember, I will be going live next week to answer your questions. So feel free to always submit your questions in the Google link in the description, or go over to the Discord and you guys can go ahead and submit some questions there. I have a new video coming up on my channel this week, as well as I always support you guys in the YouTube membership. So thank you so much, guys, again, for all of your support. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. All right. Cheers. All right. You keep forgetting to do that. Oh, I got to set that up. Cheers.